a dynamic leader and advocate known for driving impact and fostering inclusive cultures. She has a rich background in sales enablement, executive coaching with industry giants like Salesforce, AWS, and ZoomInfo. As an entrepreneur, she founded The Corporate Strategist, a successful consultancy focused on DEIBA strategies. Currently, as Vice President of Community Engagement for Girl Scouts of Oregon and Southwest Washington, she leverages her sales expertise and passion for empowerment to expand the organization's reach, particularly in underrepresented communities. In today's session, she will share how her team leverages inclusion, diversity, equity, allyship, and advocacy to transform their organization and achieve meaningful results. Please join me in welcoming Blaire Hervey. Yay! Woo!
Is the crowd going wild? Is that what's
Yes,
happening?
crowd wild.
Fantastic. I'm so glad to hear this, Beth. This may be last minute, but do I have a space to share slides or no?
Yes, at the bottom of the tab, you'll see share screen.
Okay.
And then you can share a Google Chrome tab or a window or your full desktop.
Okay. Well, I love this,
It's
friends.
really choose your own adventure.
Well, we love a good choose your own adventure. Hey, so there's two things that I definitely believe. Number one, Beth, thank you for that lovely introduction. Number one, wherever I go, I'm definitely going to elevate the energy in a space. And number two, we're going to become friends. So first things first, friends don't let friends skip breakfast. So if you have had breakfast, throw a one in the chat for me. I love to see it. Throw a one in the chat for me. If you have not had breakfast, throw a two in the chat as a little reminder that we need to hydrate, take care of ourselves, as well as make sure that we eat things that are as good as they for us as they taste. Amen. So we'll make sure that we take care of each other in that way. All right. So I have my slides here. I hope you all can see them. Beth, can I get a thumbs up from you? Can't see everyone, but can I hear you? I'm assuming so. Okay. Well, fantastic. Well, thank you again for that.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for that lovely introduction. So, like I said, in every space that I'm in, I'm going to elevate that energy and I'm going to walk out with at least one friend. I got that from my godmother, never meet a stranger. But that is actually going to take us into the conversation that we're going to have today. And that's my goal as friends, that we can have a vulnerable and a very powerful conversation. So I just want to share a little bit with you. I was born in Dallas, Texas on March 20th, 1996. On that unforgettable Wednesday, I lost my mother unexpectedly. I actually found her lifeless that day, and she was full-term pregnant with my sister, scheduled for a C-section on that Friday. So as you can imagine, my mind was blown, my heart was broken, and my life completely changed. So at that time, I was 12 years old. And in that March, my father, who I had not seen in 6 years, came to get me, to move me to Louisville, Kentucky, to meet my two brothers, who I decided to and continue to spend and share my life with. Now, as you can imagine, my identity shifted completely. And I didn't know who I was, and sometimes I didn't know where I was. And ultimately, I didn't feel like I belonged in that space, which brings us to our conversation and the work that I do today. So I appreciate Beth's introduction and sharing that I am the founder and the owner of The Corporate Strategist, CEO and head strategist. The company has been renamed to Elevate. That way we can be a business agency that really focuses on improving business as well as revenue enablement and creating inclusive cultures. I'm a revenue enablement leader as well as the VP of community engagement for Girl Scouts of Oregon and Southwest Washington and a community engagement strategist. Now, in everything that I have become and everything that I have endured, I have definitely developed not only multiple identities, but sometimes it feels like multiple personalities as well. But I'd love for you to all to take a look at this wheel and think about the things that you've been through, the things that your staff may have been through, your peers, your leaders, and think about all of the complexities that have created the individuals that we work with on a day-to-day basis. In that development, we have all of these identities. And oftentimes we want to connect with and relate to people who can connect with how we see ourselves and how we show up in the world. As a pansexual woman whose letter is not represented in the alphabet soup of the LGBTQ plus family, sometimes I do feel out of space or out of place. As a mother who had a child at 18, 19 years old, I definitely felt out of space at or out of place at those PTA meetings. And so as I navigated through this world, it was really important for me to know who I was, but also to know what spaces were going to welcome me as well as not tokenize me. And so when we're thinking about whether it's recruitment or the organizations that we work for or the decisions that we have the opportunity to influence, I want you all to think about this particular sentence here. Recruiting diverse folks fixes the culture. I can't see the chat, but I'd love for you to throw in the chat. Is this true or is this false? Recruiting diverse folks fixes the culture. If you have a homogenous space where folks feel out of place or they may not feel like they belong, sometimes we think, hey, well, maybe we should add folks from different backgrounds, different ethnicities, nationalities, people who look different, and that's going to fix the thing, right? But the truth is, ultimately, doing this only breaks the people. And in breaking the people, we're definitely going to break the business. So, how do we overcome that? Because if we don't, this is one thing that is going to definitely surface, that belonging is a basic human need. According to Maslow's hierarchy of basic needs, belonging is one of those. And in not feeling like you belong in a community, in a work environment, in a family, that can hurt as much as being physically harmed. I don't know about you all, but I'm travel size. I may speak a big game, but I am a tiny human. And when it was time to be chosen for kickball, I was never the first person to be selected. No matter how smart or fast or mighty I may have been, ultimately, that's not what they were looking for. And in that space, from the playground to the corporate spaces, oftentimes I did not feel like I belonged. And oftentimes I would put that responsibility on the organization that I worked for, on the community that was supposed to welcome me, on the city that I thought would welcome me with open arms. And the reality is, the onus was not only on those particular environments, but the responsibility is also on myself. And so I had to give myself some power back, as well as have that agency to move forward in spaces and understand a little bit more about myself and how to advocate for myself and for others. So I want to throw some stats out here. So 25% of employees feel they don't belong at work. So if you're one of those individuals who feel that way right now or know folks who do feel that way, of course, you and we are not alone. 75% of workers have felt excluded. 64% of Americans report lack of belonging, not to mention the 39% of Black workers who feel a lack of support, 60% of women and men of color who have also experienced that emotional tax. And if you're wondering what that emotional tax is, that comes from the undeniable code switching that we implement in certain spaces as a form of survival in mainstream spaces, in homogenous spaces where we feel like we have not been welcomed historically, or where we're always having to bring a folding chair to feel included. And that becomes an unsurmountable amount of emotional labor on our shoulders. So, again, when we're thinking about belonging, it's not just about who is responsible and everyone else that's responsible. It's also on the folks who are marginalized to think about how do we, again, stand up for ourselves in these spaces and create these spaces of belonging so our teams can go a lot further as well. And so I encourage you all to think about these 4 different dimensions of belonging. Number 1, understanding. So when you're thinking about yourself personally, do I understand what is expected of me? And again, if you are in that environment, have you set those expectations for others so that others know what is expected of them? Because without those straight on expectations, it's hard for me to make sure that I can truly perform in this space. And secondly, if you look at the top right, is control. I have a sense of how to get those results. So as an individual, do I know how to achieve these expectations that are in front of me? Do I know how to achieve these goals? How are they being tracked? When are they being tracked? And if things are going off the track or off the rails, do I have a sense of how and who can I get that information from to make sure that I can be successful? Or do I feel like I'm out there on my own, and if I don't hit my goals or get the results that we're looking for, that I'm not going to be able to continue to work at this organization and and fulfill my needs and my responsibilities in that role? And if you're looking at that bottom right, it's the trust. So if I do feel that way, is there someone that I can reach out to? Do I feel like I can really trust people? If I'm vulnerable and share these things with others, are they going to share that with other people and put me in a space where I'm not going to be able to be promoted, or where I can't succeed? Can I truly trust those individuals? And then that far bottom left says self-enhancing. Of all the work that I'm doing on a day-to-day basis, I can understand what's expected of me. I can feel a sense of control in how to get those results. But am I getting that recognition in the way that makes sense for me? That could be through pay, that can be through sponsorship, that can be through mentorship, that can be through simple recognitions in team meetings. But does this work feel self-enhancing? I can think of one particular situation in an organization where we were not getting the results that we needed from our customers. Ultimately, our customers needed to adopt the technology. We were teaching them how to do a thing, but they weren't doing it. So ultimately, they were not seeing the value in the technology, and that was leading to a substantial amount of churn. These customers were leaving our company because they didn't see the value in it. And when I had to take a look at how to resolve this issue, I looked at the people who were teaching our customers. And it was a great team, but it was a homogenous team. It was predominantly white male with a sales background. So they had a specific way of sharing knowledge with our customers that wasn't resonating or landing very well with all of those customers. So one of the first things that I decided to do was think about, how do we diversify this team? By ethnicity, by nationality, by also background. Because what's really important is, how do we speak the language of not only one type of customer, but of all of our customers? You all, friends, in that summer, I increased diversity on that team by 30%, welcoming women, welcoming folks who had a restaurant background, welcoming folks from the service industry who could speak to our customers in a way that was impactful. We went from hour-long trainings to 30-minute chunks of knowledge and cut technology adoption in half. So that meant our customers were absorbing that knowledge a lot faster, finding the value a lot faster, and we were decreasing churn. And that's because we were thinking about, how can we implement this big idea, if you will, of inclusion, diversity, equity, as well as allyship in that environment. Four things that we really had to think about also as it pertains to belonging was psychological safety. So that's not only for myself, as one of the only Black leaders in that organization and a lot of organizations that I've worked for, but also of our staff and of our customers. Number one, that first level is inclusion safety. Do these folks feel included? Again, our sister Shirley Chisholm once upon a time said, if you don't have a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. Well, that shouldn't be only my responsibility. Hopefully someone is also not only bringing that chair for me, but my name tag is there and ready, and they're listening when I get in that room. And then hopefully that next step is also implemented, that learner safety. Is this an environment where, again, I can learn, but also where others are willing to learn from me? I have something to say. I have a voice. And when that voice is heard, can I contribute to that environment, in an environment where we can grow? I'm sure we're all tired of hearing, we just don't do it that way, or we've tried it before, or yeah, you can try it, but we know it's not going to work. We have to establish that contributor safety as well, for folks to really feel like they belong in that environment, and for them to be able to perform at their best. And at that best is at that challenger safety, when I feel like I can challenge the status quo. If I didn't feel safe enough to really feel emboldened to challenge what our team looked like at that time, we wouldn't have been successful. And that organization would not be as successful as it is in the work that they continue to do. In the work that I do today, again, I love the environment that I work in and the people that I work for. But in oftentimes in those environments, they're still quite homogenous. And so I'm often the person that feels that I have been called to challenge the way that we have created communities and troops and what volunteerism looks like today. And again, if you don't feel that level of challenge or safety, folks are going to leave your organization, your team, your environment, and even your family because they don't feel safe enough to be able to perform and show up as they want to. So I know that we've talked about IDEA in the sense of diversity or DEI being rebranded, if you will. But I also encourage us to think about IDEA at a more granular level. So when we're talking about belonging being everyone's business and the onus being on ourselves as well as the environment, we need to think about these four components as well. So, number one, taking from that psychological safety, we need to focus on inclusion. Asking myself, do I feel included? And if I don't feel included, how am I able to advocate for myself in that environment? As leaders and community professionals, are we asking the question, who's not in this room? Whose voice have we not heard from? How can we elevate that voice and make sure that they are invited? Because oftentimes we're creating things for them without them. And if we think about our age old 90s brand FUBU, right? For us, by us, we need to make sure that we are creating communities and spaces for people, but with folks. In the work that I do today, we are creating an absolutely phenomenal initiative where we are re-engaging Black families. And in order to do so, we are not asking them to volunteer or come be something or come do something. We're asking for their opinions, their thoughts, and their concerns on trust barriers, brand perception, and what we can do better to make sure that Black youth and Black girls make sure that they feel included. And before we can make that judgment or create something for them in our business, we have to first ask those questions. The second thing that we have to do, again, as individuals and organizations, is dream big. So if we want folks to feel included, we want a diverse environment, we want folks to feel like they can truly perform, we have to dream up what that environment can and look like, visualize it, and really truly educate on ourselves on what we need to do to create these environments. So please, y'all, before we continue to diversify, let's make sure that we're thinking about what do we need to do to cultivate the soil. I had the honor and the privilege of being able to purchase a home back in May of 2021 at a very low APR, thanks to everything that was going on during that time. And I wanted a garden, just a simple garden so I can grow some fruits and vegetables. But you all, I was blessed with over 30 species around my home of different roses and plants and all kinds of beautiful things. And being in Portland, Oregon, I thought rain was going to be enough to make sure that they all got what they needed. But essentially, I did not educate myself to make sure that the diversity of plant life around me was able to thrive. So that's the first thing that we need to make sure that we do before we welcome new folks into the environment. And when we're talking about, again, ethnicity, nationality, we're also talking about backgrounds. We're talking about different types of thinkers and innovators. We're talking about different types of personality styles and disc styles, MBTI, all of those things. Educate ourselves on what to expect from these individuals so we can do our very best to really welcome them with open arms so they can be successful in these environments. And then lastly, we have to hold ourselves accountable. So we said we were going to do a thing. We were going to have X amount of individuals from these backgrounds, from these ethnicities, these races, to accomplish a big goal. But how are we tracking that success? Let's not be those organizations of 2020 that promised big things and are not fulfilling all of those things that they said that they were going to fulfill based on heightened emotions. We're going to track our success with tools like Looker and Salesforce, and we're going to make sure that we hold ourselves accountable to the highest degree to make sure that we're not only bringing individuals into the environment, but that they want to stay. How do we measure retention and think about employee engagement on a whole different level to make sure, again, we're not breaking the people and we're really building up our business environments? So I want to thank you all for taking a moment to truly listen in. I know we didn't have a lot of time to dive in, but I want to create space for you all to ask questions as well about how we truly apply belonging to business and take our results further by listening to each other, hearing from each other, and not breaking these people, but building up these environments. So if you want to make excellence a habit and learn a little bit more about how to do this work, please reach me at elevate@blairghervey.com. Connect with me on LinkedIn. We can share in some wonderful conversations. And you can also go to the current website, thecorporatestrategist.com, to learn a little bit more about the work that we've done in these spaces. So I'll pass it back to you, Beth, to see if we have any questions. Unfortunately, I couldn't see the chat, but I'd love to hear from the audience here.
Wow, Blair, that was such an inspiring presentation.
Thank you.
I love the energy that you brought into the presentation as well. So instead of Beth, you've got me today
Yes.
to moderate the
Hey.
Q&A. Yes, I'm so excited. And you were not lying when you said that you're working out of here with like friends.
Yeah.
You have like +1 here.
Yes. I love to see that.
Okay, yes. Thank you so much for that insightful session. And I really loved hearing about your practical approaches for idea. And we do have a couple of questions in the Q&A. So
Yeah.
I'm just gonna like dive right into that first. So we can discuss more important things.
Let's do it.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Okay. I'm gonna take this question. There's a very interesting question from Anita. I'm gonna read it out loud to you.
Okay.
How do you prevent people forming cliques as an organization grows? Are cliques okay to a certain extent?
Oh, I love that. So the word clicks obviously has a very negative connotation, right? What I love to really implement within businesses are affinity groups. And I'm sure we've heard about affinity groups and employee resource groups. Now, those cliques can be created, but ultimately, I'm one of those individuals that dives right in. So if I know that there has been a clique that has been harmful to a group, so they've been exclusionary, or they're always having meetings without people that should be included in these environments. Guess what I do? Blaire welcomes them into a meeting. So it'll be a meeting and me and all of those individuals. And I'll say, hey, I'm glad to meet with all of you. Some folks I've met before, some folks I haven't. But I just wanted to make sure that I created space for us to all come together and have a conversation about, how we can work together to take on some of the tasks or some of the challenges that I'm noticing that are happening in this environment. I notice that you all work really well together and you all have these great side conversations, but I'm wondering, what are you all's thoughts on bringing some of these conversations into the fold of the business so that we can solve for X? And so what that does, number one, it puts everyone on notice, which is, hey, what we're not going to do is create these cliques that are harmful to other folks in our business environments. There's no place for that. Now, if you want to come together because you all have some type of commonality, sure, let's create space for that. But let's also talk about how we can solve for some different business challenges. And that's not a selfish thing to want to solve for the business. It's to also help these individuals. It helps to upskill them. It helps to create leadership opportunities for them as well. And it helps to them to create something that not again only impacts the business, but can impact the community around them. So I have been huge on developing these individuals to create affinity groups and employee resource groups. And if you want to know how I've done that from the ground up at very large tech organizations, I'd be happy to work with you. So make sure you email me about that.
Amazing. Thank you so much for such a practical tip on the like really good answer. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm not gonna waste from my end. So I have another question from Beth in the Q&A. How do you balance doing things personally while thinking about sustainability, like long training sessions are wonderful, but they aren't always sustainable as teams grow. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's great. So I just created or launched a community engagement training series. And again, if you want to know more about that, feel free to email me. I was able to recruit 18 experts in event success, cultural competence, and strategic prospecting to help our current team really launch this wonderful initiative that we've been working on. And it was 4 weeks, 1 hour a day. And you're right, and they were longer trainings, but what we did was created smaller chunks of learnings, or that's what we're working on, smaller chunks of learnings from those long trainings. So number one, they were all recorded. So they've been embedded in onboarding for everyone. So it's not just this team that's responsible for community engagement, but everyone that's onboarding will be responsible for at least watching the cultural competence trainings. We'll be creating smaller chunks of knowledge as well to share with our volunteers so that they can enhance their learnings in those areas as well. And we are creating or will be creating roundtable discussions. So what you have to do is remember that what I had to do was remember that although I may have been tasked with spearheading an initiative, you have to do some succession planning in that as well to pass the baton. Otherwise, you become the DEI person, the community person, the person that solves all the problems. You have to bring people along with you. So I always try to partner with someone, kind of teach them what the plan is, share in the vision, and have a long-term strategy to make sure something big can be implemented throughout the strategy for long-term success.
Amazing. I think collaborating and co-creating and working together is like really the key when it comes to growing the pie that we all share.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much, Blair. I think that is pretty much it for all the questions that we have, but the chat is blowing up with like so many things, like so many comments about like how everyone resonates with your sharing as well. And that is all the time we have for Q&A, and it's been a pleasure moderating this Q&A, and thank you for joining us today, Blair. A huge thank you to you. Before we wrap up your session, would you mind like letting us know how to get connected with you on like what you shared and the presentation that you shared today?
Absolutely. So I'm happy to share the presentation if that could be shared with everyone in some sort of way. I did see someone ask for the links referred and my email. I did put my email in the chat, which is simply elevate@blaireGhervey.com. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. I love to set up 15-minute meetings, coffee chats with folks, and I'd love to meet with you. And it's no Hollywood talk. Trust me, during the pandemic, I was meeting with at least 3 people a day. So I'd love to meet with you all.
Love it. Thank you so much, Blair.
No
It's a pleasure
problem.
hosting you.
Thank you. Thank
Thanks,
you all.
Mimi. Thanks, Blaire. Yes, Blaire, you and I can talk about possibly sharing slides and figuring an easy way to do that for our community. But thank you so much for joining us.
No problem, Beth. You have a wonderful day.